Then there's this one that I was looking at a while ago. Confessions of an MMO Addict. What does that mean?
Genre.
Speaking as someone with very few real-life responsibilities to maintain, MMOs have always appealed to me on an almost spiritual level. I have fond memories as a child with a personal computer and little online supervision, exploring dodgy at best digital directories for free-to-play massively multiplayer online role-playing games or MMORPGs. I've put a fair amount of hours into many MMOs in my day. The cream of the crop of MMOs, such as Fiesta, Adventure Quest, and Destiny 2. As well as WoW Classic, Terra, and some other miscellaneous time sinks. But even with all those hundreds or even thousands of hours, I can't quite put my finger on what specifically draws me to them in the first place. Maybe it's the way they reward the absurd amount of grind they require with lots of sparkly gear and complimentary dopamine points just when you're on the verge of giving up. Whatever the reason, this time around I wanted to try my hand at a deep dive into the gameplay, mechanics, and culture of Final Fantasy, and specifically talk about one story in particular. Keep in mind that I'll largely be speaking from a position of opinion rather than fact, so if I talk shit on your favorite distraction factory along the way, allow me to offer you a
I'll try to keep that in mind, but I don't know if it'll work. Oh, okay. Gotcha. That makes sense. Yeah.
Preemptive cup of shut the fuck up. After bouncing around from fix to fix, I think I may have finally found my crown jewel, my treasure, my black tar heroine. God, this script is so fucked. Anyway, let's get started. So, in the making of this video, my partner and I were standing outside of our free company house in the mist, and these random strangers just showed up. This isn't a bizarre occurrence, as each ward of a housing district is one big neighborhood, but usually people either flex their mouths or wave or make conversation, you know, something other than aggressively dancing in a frog costume with Holmgang on. I actually thought it was pretty funny at the time.
It's actually kind of cool, because it literally says Gecko. This is Confessions of an MMO Addict, and he's looking at FF14 and talking about certain portions of FF14. So I'm looking to see like if he has anything legit to say. This has come up on my feed multiple times, and I haven't looked at it, so this is the first time that I'm actually delving in.
The time, especially when her buddy eventually says,
"Rogue, no, this is why we can't let you out of the cupboard."
"Rogue off the shits," I replied, trying to not shame this raver catgirl in a kaleidoscopic frog suit.
"Rogue is always off the shits,"
he replies ominously. Rogue, who was, in fact, a warrior and not a ninja or rogue, began to slow down somewhat at this point, to which I said, "Oh, he's tuckering himself out. Run off the energy, little guy." At which point Rogue immediately starts his frantic dancing anew, and I responded in kind. I tried doing /Hildy to assert my gamer dominance in front of my own home, but while my vibes may have been menacing, hers were
I just wanted to see what the person had to say. My disagreement was a joke at the beginning. I just, because it's come up on my feed multiple times, and I was just like, it kind of sounds interesting, I'm not sure. But no, yeah, the Grand Blue stuff actually looks really, really, really cool, so.
Eldritch and unknowable.
"He's never gonna run out of energy,"
replies her companion again, seemingly resigned to his fate. I once again attempted to rein in this chuckle fuck by making a joke about her attire. A classy three-piece suit,
I think
dress
both,
shoes,
murder.
a black parasol, and, most disturbingly and pointed of all, a stylized bunny mask. At this point, I could only assume that this stranger was aware of my jests and japes and was making it keenly clear what happened to those that pressed their luck. Perhaps this mask was the hollowed-out and upholstered trophy belonging to the last Viera that crossed her. It was at this point that I decided to look them up in the player search, perhaps being able to glean some semblance of identity. Seeing the icon indicating that they had set a custom search comment, I was thrilled at the prospect. Further examination, though, only left me with more questions. I simply had to know more. If this was my last evening in Eorzea, then so be it.
"Would you like to see my basement?"
she asked, the first words spoken, and they were a direct question. Still a
does
bit
look like Donnie
apprehensive,
Darko.
I raised an eyebrow and questioned if they were perhaps propositioning me in front of my partner. Ignoring me almost completely, she continues.
"It is where I work."
I repeated my previous joke, to which the suited stranger simply runs in the other direction, and I felt compelled to follow. She led us to a small house a few streets over from our abode, the placard out front illuminating it as an abandoned warehouse, and that there was nothing to see here.
What am I watching? But it is. It's like Alice in Wonderland like Donnie Darko or like, but like in game. I wasn't expecting it to take this turn. Where you keep doing. I am too, but like seriously. Am I? Are you sure? I don't know.
Quickly, yet nervously, we walk to the front door, click on the entrance, and are met with 4 words that would change our lives forever.
What?
Enter the estate hall.
Maybe. Hey,
Owing
Greg,
entirely
what's
to
up?
the fact that I am not a boomer, I missed the wave of success that World of Warcraft rode in the early 2000s. It completely shaped how MMOs were designed, and its effects can be felt even to this day. I remember playing it, but I never got very far. Rest in piss, Tauren Druid, you big dumb cow. But when I say I played it, I did so in the same vein as console games of the era, i.e. poorly.
Right.
Never really got the
Belmont?
appeal at the time.
It's weird.
Games were challenges to be
I'm
conquered,
actually
not
really
Sisyphean
intrigued.
endurance tests, so it didn't hold my interest for more than a few days' time. But a few months after Classic came out, I was completely and utterly sold. Had I missed out on all these nostalgic memories, I asked myself? Had I been living my life blissfully ignorant of the splendor and majesty that is a 15-year-old video game with mechanics just as stale? It couldn't hurt to give it a try. I mean, $15 isn't exactly the steepest price in the world to pay, and I can just try it out for a month anyway, so if I don't like it, I can just cancel. I awoke bleary-eyed, unshaven, unkempt, and unfulfilled. I had just spent a
Wait.
third of a year playing the same game at least 12
Go back to
hours a day,
14. I wanna
every
see what's
day.
gonna
And what did I
happen.
have to show for it? Well, I still wasn't level 60, so your guess is as good as mine, but it probably wasn't worth it. I remember bringing the proposition of switching to Final Fantasy XIV
Oh,
to
here
a
we
couple
go.
of
Okay,
friends, both of which were a little trepidatious about starting another
No, it's the
MMO
same
when we
video.
hadn't even finished the last one, by whatever metric that may be. But they both gave it a try, and this game has sunk its claws into
No, I
us.
didn't.
And at
I
first, I
didn't.
didn't really know why that is. Comparatively, the amount of loot is rather low, there isn't as much glowy gear, and many abilities are on a hefty 2.5 second global cooldown. But as I began to play more and more, I realized that these things were not admissions of lack of effort, rather the opposite. When the amount of loot you could get is high, the amount of gear that is viable for use remains low, resulting in constant micromanagement to maximize stats. 14 keeps the amount of gear relatively low, instead focusing on making every piece of gear visually appealing in one way or another and attractive to one kind of aesthetic. This way you can
That's
see
true.
yourself change from a run-of-the-mill nobody into a battle-hardened warrior
I
worthy
literally
of
just
saving
talked
the world.
about this
I know it's
earlier.
kind of a meme in a lot of other games to say fashion is the true endgame, but firstly, this game is the only one I've seen to have an interactive fashion catalog, and lastly, if you
It
think
is,
fashion's
because
a
they
meme,
make
let me
it so
tell you
that
about
every
the
single
housing
thing looks
crisis.
good on
Relic
every
weapons
single
are
race.
extremely difficult and time-consuming to obtain, but are much more showy and extravagant, all while keeping in theme with both the type of weapon and the class fantasy that uses them. Not to mention that by the time you'll be grinding to get them, they won't usually be a stat upgrade for you anymore because they came out several years before you even started
Well,
playing.
I wanna
So
go
gear
back
you
to
can
the
get from
house. I
dungeons,
wanna know what
bosses, and from
happens.
crafters in the
I wanna know
marketplace
what
will
happens
almost
in the
always be
warehouse.
universally an upgrade. Hi, in the making of this script, patch 5.35 of Shadowbringers dropped, which released the Recollection tier of the resistance weapons, which are 5 item levels below the max
Climbing
currently
puzzle
available in the
endgame, no
game.
thank you.
Okay, back to the show. I love the system so much more than what so many other games do because it encourages players to seek their own metric of success. Not everyone needs a min-maxed, over-melded gear setup so they can squeeze
I'll
out
be level wherever you
0.01% more DPS against Shiva in E8S. It gives raiding
That's
another
true.
purpose beyond get the best
Hey,
possible
thanks so much
gear
for
that
the
will become
follow.
outdated when the next patch drops. They're not here for the battlefield, they're just here for the runway. Players who want to face tougher,
I know, that's
completely
true.
redesigned
It's not
fights
a long
against
relic
bosses who
grind.
will
People
more
are
than
upset
likely
about
slap
that.
their shit have
like,
the
I already have a
opportunity to
relic,
test their
and I
metal.
already have
Those who
the
want to
shiny
complete
relic.
their glamour will also end up with a reason to go, as the gear can't be obtained any other way and looks just so sublime. And even the players who don't care about raiding end up in a really interesting scenario, where they may even end up being enticed to Savage Raid because they see a piece of gear that they want. This, of course,
This is
naturally
true.
leads to players having to become better at the game, furthering their
Which
own
is why they
enjoyment
should
of
make
it in
even
order to
better stuff
complete
in
their
PvP
goals.
to
And all the
forward the
while, the
PvP
game isn't
community.
pushing you towards raiding like WoW does. Hell, the raids are completely optional, set behind unlocked quests and have their own cutscenes and story that tie directly back into the main scenario quests of the expansion they were introduced in. And the lengthy global cooldowns, while also working in tandem with the lag protection on the server side of things, is an extremely interesting way to diversify classes and jobs from each other, even among the same archetype. The Black Mage, for example, acts more like artillery, lobbing spell after every cast time, while using their cooldowns reflexively during movement-heavy phases and mechanics to keep their numbers high. Many Machinist abilities are not only instant cast, but are not on global cooldown, allowing you to weave those abilities in between your main damage-dealing rotation, increasing your overall overall DPS
I have to
output, but
try
also
out
providing a much
Machinist. I
more
have to try out, like,
nuanced technical
everything.
approach to combat encounters. The differences in class
you
structure
guys
makes
wanted to
each
watch
class not
movies
only
today.
feel different to
I'm just
play, but
picking.
fundamentally changes how
Shoo-woo.
encounters and bosses are fought. Oh hey, Destiny, didn't see you there. Try not to trip over Final Fantasy XIV's huge fucking meat. All of these systems would have made for a really compelling game on their own, but because they work in tandem with one another, the game winds up being leagues ahead of its competitors in my eyes. See, in contrast,
Yeah.
WoW feels like a
Same,
job.
lady.
It feels as though all of its potential selling points are things I have to do, whereas here in 14, it feels like everything the game has to offer are things I get to do. WoW feels like a
Yeah, that's how it feels to me right now, actually. Which is funny because I was planning on starting this video and joking about disagreeing with stuff, but like, that's why I was so excited about what Chris and I are doing on Thursdays, because I've already lost interest. Not in Classic. I barely tried Classic, but like, it's only fun when I play with certain people. And that's exactly what it feels like. It's so funny. It actually really is funny. That's why I'm like, oh, on Thursdays, I'll be playing with Chris. We'll be answering questions. We'll be like, making comparisons. We can talk about the different contrasts and the different systems and how they work for the different games and what people can expect out of each one. And to be honest, the only time I have fun raiding is when I'm raiding with like Chalk and his friends. So it's like, I don't know. Is it on Fairy? Yeah, exactly, Adlahide. Exactly. See, I like 14. I actually really do. But I wouldn't make someone play. Like, I wouldn't pressure someone into playing. But, like, I don't know. That's how it feels for me. Like, this is exactly what he said is exactly how I feel. And again, not about Classic. I didn't really spend much time with Classic, but this is how I feel right now.
soul-crushing 9-to-5 job, while 14 feels like, well, not that is my point. So when faced with tedious, grind-filled gameplay, the borderline necessity of add-ons to make the game playable, and a community of nostalgia-blinded middle-aged men, it's little wonder that we all abandoned ship. All hope seemed lost. We had fallen out of love with one massive time waster and were actively searching for another. What game could fill this yawning void in our lives? Just shut the fuck up and say the name already. It's Final Fantasy XIV's Shadowbringers, alright? God, buzzkills.
It really is. It really absolutely is.
Attempting to gain our bearings in these strange new surroundings proved difficult. The light was low, there was refuse strewn about the floor,
Tiny
the walkways
paws.
cramped. Upon seeing the
I know,
three
that's why I
clothesless
chuckled.
Lullafell imprisoned in what looked to be some kind of killing floor, I applauded her sense of justice. But the mysterious stranger simply said nothing as her cohort collapsed.
We're back! We're back to the mysterious bunny. I'm so excited. Wait, hold on. It was a whole video inside the video, and I have to pee before I find out about this bunny. So I will be right back. Don't go anywhere.
This town certainly has changed, and not at all for the better.
Okay, I got so excited that I had to pee. Aw, thank you so much for the resub, Solid. It comes up with your little, with your blurb. I appreciate it. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And thank you, I appreciate it. Ishgard for the crab mount. Oh, right. There's all of the new stuff. I totally forgot. Yeah, well, not tomorrow, but Wednesday. Wednesday I will. But thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you, thank you, thank you. All right. Let's see what happens with the bunny.
Of sudden cardiac arrest on her operating table. She set to work as her victim encouraged her from beyond the grave.
Work.
Improve me.
It was at this point that I began to question my curiosity. A pang of fear began to creep in as they led us down a flight of stairs and into what seemed to be some kind of sanctuary. A table sat in the very center, and atop it lay a humble tea set and colorful cyan lamps. Getting a bit of whiplash given the upstairs furnishings, I complimented their choice of decor, strange as it may be. Rogue, ignoring me once more, pressed ever onwards.
There's the tea
The
party.
elders will soon arrive to court. We will gift you with their presence when that
It
time
literally
has
is
come.
Alice
I
in
asked for more
Wonderland.
information about these mysterious elders, to which Idea replied,
Praise be to the elders. Soon their divine judgment shall reign upon all.
Rogue further elaborated.
They guide against those who lurk below, aiding those of ankles strong. Those with weak ankles will not survive the culling.
To keep the peace, I asked if we should stow our weapons as a gesture of goodwill. Rogue's response?
The promised time will come, once our FC house is finished.
Regardless, we were permitted to leave the warehouse, and we went to investigate their FC house instead, the Echo Chamber, a large plot not too far from our own home. Choosing to not
Wait, the echo chamber? What? Like, is this all an elaborate ruse just to get this person to look at their house in FC house? Like, what?
Once our FC house is finished.
Regardless, we were permitted to leave the warehouse, and we went to investigate their FC house instead, the Echo Chamber, a large
Yeah. Echo Gecko. The echo chamber. Lego my echo gecko. What? We can't, yeah. What?
large plot not too far from our own home. Choosing to not press our luck, we stepped away and went about our business. But ever since that day, we would often see Rogue from the corners of our eyes, watching us, waiting for us. In typical Final Fantasy fashion, once you
And
finish
we're
making
going
your
back to
character and
this!
selecting your class,
No!
race, and quest size, you're immediately placed into a series of cutscenes. A deep-voiced narrator gives you a brief primer on the world you live in, major events thus far, and eventually the city you start in. Compared to other MMOs, this is much more engaging. Instead of saying, here's what you're going to be doing for the next 1,000 hours of your life, it begins a story, a narrative through line that gives you an implicit reason to continue playing the game, and of course, ultimately
It is
paying your
awesome.
subscription fee. Now,
It is awesome, but it's like, I'm excited because it's literally an open letter on 14. So he's discussing how he feels about 14, being an MMO addict, comparing like how he's felt playing other MMOs comparatively with how he's felt playing 14 and how he likes it so much. But I want to get to the end of the bunny story. Good luck. And I know that he's doing it on purpose to keep you until the end of the video, but come on.
fair warning, this game is about as Final Fantasy as it gets in terms of storytelling. If you're looking for a spoiler warning, consider this your off-ramp. The story, or should I say stories in Final Fantasy XIV, are incredibly diverse and long-winded, so keep in mind that I'll be glossing over many of the finer details to keep the pace glacial as opposed to completely non-moving. Our journey starts by showing us the fractured, scarred, and disparate nation of Eorzea in a large-scale battle with the 7th Imperial Legion of the Garlean Empire. People on both sides of the struggle fight tooth and nail for every inch of ground, flinging spells and arrows, blade against blade, as the ominous moon Dalamud falls from on high. The conflict doesn't get so much won or lost as ended, with a bleak, devastating finality in the form of the reawakened Bahamut, as he lays waste to everything in sight. But thanks to the last-ditch efforts of Louisoix and a few others, the adventurers are teleported 5 years into the future, in hopes of rebuilding a world they tried to save. In the 5 years since this event, the major city-states have been attempting
Now
to
we're going through
re-establish
this
some
whole
semblance
thing.
of peace and stability, facing bandits, cutthroats, and most recently an onslaught of monstrous void sent manifesting across
I
the
am
world.
more
It's pretty much
interested in
told to
that.
us from moment one that there isn't jack shit that we're going to be able to do. The world is trying and failing to survive this umbral era, the 7th one to occur in recorded history, and one bunny girl with a stick doesn't a savior make. It's this tempering of expectations that really hammers this point home. The world is big, bleak, openly hostile, and does not give a shit about you. Which is why when the mysterious powers of the
Yeah,
Echo begin
seriously.
manifesting, allowing you to accomplish feats and slay monsters that no one else is able to, that it feels so earned. Your character wasn't born a hero, they chose to become one, and were rewarded for their efforts. And that's how you end up meeting your world-saving party. It isn't a group of people
And that's what a lot of people like about this. That you choose to become a hero. That's cool.
favored by gods pulling the strings in a multiversal game of Jenga. It's a group of normal, everyday people who, given the chance, will always fan the flames of hope so others can do the same. Now, this isn't to say that the story is all peaks and no valleys, because, oh boy, are there ever valleys. While the story is interesting much of the time, it isn't very unique from the get-go. Of course, objectively, I can recognize that this is because the game is taking the time to build a consistent narrative foundation, establish
That's true.
precedents and expectations for the player that can be subverted later, and oh, hello again, Destiny. I was wondering who tracked all this dog shit in here. I see you brought World of Warcraft along too. How nice. But regardless, it doesn't make the game any less of a slog until you get out of the first major arc. With that being said, I am a massive sucker for games that aren't afraid to tell different stories with different themes and ideas. After the Astral
Slash sips on her old fashioned after that. Yeah, just like the story of Choco Billy. Oh, Choco Billy.
Umbral Era arc, you go to Ishgard and deal with a nation rife with radicalism, politicism, ignorance of the past, and an unwillingness to acknowledge past tragedies or prevent their perpetuation. Then in Dragonsong War, you help that same country recognize its checkered past and move forward in aiding those they harmed, creating a more stable and prosperous nation than had ever existed previously. And you still have like several hundred hours of story between 2 expansions left to go. But wait, you started off this arbitrary chapter in this YouTube video by referencing Shadowbringers specifically. Well, you're right, because Shadowbringers was the expansion that made me want to make this video. It turned the game from an MMO with a pretty good story and really fun mechanics to, if I don't tell people about this game, I will explode. The story of Shadowbringers is, without a shred of doubt, one of the best stories that I have ever experienced up to this point, in a video game or otherwise. And the fact that this happened in an MMO of all places is absolutely bonkers. The reason that I'm highlighting Shadowbringers specifically rather than A Realm Reborn,
really?
Heaven's Word, or Stormblood is because
spoilers.
each of them, while interesting and compelling in their own right to specific kinds of people who already enjoy the story beats they have to offer, weren't exactly mold breakers in terms of narrative. They were almost formulaic in their 3-act structure, introduction, and setup of the villain and conflict, and the inevitable resolution. And that isn't to say that any of those expansions are bad, with the exception of most of A Realm Reborn, because Jesus Christ, the beginning half of that played like rowing a boat down a gravel driveway. But none of them really added that something new, something different,
Oh no. Yeah, it's in Fairy, I think. No, he's not. It was just...
something.
Your time has not yet come.
The setup to Shadowbringers, being teleported against your will to a parallel
Yeah,
world, while not the
exactly.
most original plot hook in the world, is still fucking incredible for this game's narrative in particular. It allows for a reprieve from the politics and grandstanding in Eorzea, and while we were still fighting every day to get back home, as there was still lots of work to be done and threats to quell, we were brought before an exciting new mystery. One that would explain why night has vanished from the world of the first, why it has been supplanted with an oversaturated, blinding sky full of clouds and sunbeams that almost makes the entire world look like something from an ancient storybook. As a warrior of light from the source, your home dimension, you brought light to a world overflowing with darkness, being told that every step that the Void sent are monsters needed to be destroyed, that what you were doing is right. And these things are correct, but they're not universal, as we see firsthand on the first. To bring more light to this world would be to seal its fate, to steal the last few years of life that its inhabitants have fought tooth and nail to earn them. And so, as the name of the expansion would suggest, we must bring shadow to this world, to free it from the tyranny of light, to become a warrior of darkness. And
It's so cool. Like, I hope that he goes back to the whole bunny thing, because it's literally like, and I love how it's Alice in Wonderland. Like, I love how he is contrasting that with like what could have been split up into 3 different videos. And he's talking about the difference between 14 and all of the other MMOs that he's played, and how Shadowbringers is so amazing. And it really just kind of, it runs parallel with the idea of being on that trip down the rabbit hole. Like, that is cool. That is really cool. I like the way this is done, even though and it's good because it leaves me wanting more, but at the same time, I'm like, I hate you because you leave me wanting more. So it's cool. Is there a WoW creator that does this too? It's amazing. Yeah, exactly. As well, Nino. It's amazing. It's amazing.
And everything in Shadowbringers hammers these themes home. Perspective, purpose, self-examination, hopelessness, despair, and the resolve to keep fighting anyway. To speak on just perspective for a moment, on the first, what do we fight? People who are trying to survive, who follow their better virtues to the point of destroying themselves and everything they stood for. Wild animals and monsters, instead of looking like the stuff of nightmares, are things that look almost too pure. Most of the Sin Eater enemies look like animate marble statues. Things that should inspire under normal circumstances instill fear instead.
I see now. This is the passion of my
Innocent!
Anywhere. I shall embrace it.
You're fine. You don't need to apologize. This is Confessions of an MMO Addict, an open letter on 14. Oh no, he is hot. Exactly. Yeah, the story for Heaven's Word is just as good, and this is so cool. This is cool.
There's so much I want to say about Shadowbringers. I wanted to sit here and gush about how goddamn motherfucking amazing it is as a story, but I've already said far too much for my own good and yours. I want to thank all of you who watched this video. It's been a long time coming, and I didn't say everything I wanted to say, and it really isn't perfect, but this is a good enough primer, I think. Sorry if it seems kind of
No! It literally says I was gonna do a 3rd act to the rogue stuff, but it felt like it was getting super old. No, it wasn't! Like, I was excited to hear the rest of what he was talking about for the video, but I wanted it. No! That's the whole reason I watched the rest of the video. I was gonna do a 3rd act to the rogue stuff, but it felt like it was getting super old, so here's some footage of me exploring her actual house. Oh, I'm triggered. I'm triggered. I'm so triggered right now. And a stage with a cake spotlighted in the basement. Oh, I'm so upset. I was so excited. No. Oh, man. Oh, man. Asking for the continue. I should be like, dude, I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna do that. We're gonna finish this, and then I'm gonna post a comment that's like, I literally watched this to get the rest of the RP, and while I agree with every single thing you said, you totally blue-balled me on this. Yeah, it's like, what? No!
rambly and all over the place, but there is a lot that can be said about this game. I hope you'll be on the lookout for future videos, and if you want to try the game out, I'll leave both a link to try it out completely free from level 1 to 60 and a recruitment code to give you a few extra goodies that you can use in your fledgling journey through Eorzea in the description below. Until next time, signed, RC.
No, RC, let me tell you, he probably has a ton of comments. I'm subscribing to you. I'm literally commenting right here. Thank you so much for the follow. Yeah, I know there are creators that do this, but I thought I watched the video. I literally watched the video to get the rest of that story. All right, so I'm literally saying you had me at Weird Bunny RP. I was analyzing those portions of, typing is hard, of the video and felt like they correlated to both Alice in Wonderland and Donnie Darko. I was so riveted that I watched the whole thing. While I agree with you, alright, so while I agree with your statements on the game, I would have loved to have the RP finished. Is there any way you can do a continuation? New DM, I know, I literally just saw it. Oh, I'm so upset. The whole video also felt like a trip down the rabbit hole. There you go. Got it. And I've subscribed to you. So, RC, let's go. FF14 impressions from a BDO veteran. That would be fun. Alright, what DM did I just get? FF14. Oh. A drunken adventure. FF14, a sex house. Okay. Yeah, that sounds fun.